This video is a part of a series where I teach you all the fundamental basics of Unity and how to get started with developing your own game in Unity. You are welcome to leave any recommendations in the comments section for a topic that you want me to explain. For example, if you don't know what a bridge body is, I will dedicate an entire video to explaining it to the finest detail. Now, enough of me babbling, let's get on to the video.
Hello and welcome back to another tutorial made by 2D Dream Studio. In the last video, I said that I'll be teaching you how to use the references within the Unity C# script to modify and create some interesting stuff in Unity. So let's get started. To play any game on the market, what you will need is something to input your controls into the game. For example, your keyboard, and that's what I'm going to teach you today, how to get inputs in the Unity C# script. This is where we left off last time, just by writing a public variable to make it show up within the inspector. So what we're going to do now is adding a bit of input to this. So what I have done here is just doing the same thing as last time, but doing a private. Remember, not putting anything in front of the number, or just it's the same as this, but instead it's a int. It makes it a private. It will do the same if I put private in front of this. So saving a variable num equals 1 and private update, and then an if statement and debug the log. So I'm gonna explain each one, don't worry. So the update void update is basically executed once every frame. So depending on what frame you have, it will run this how many times. So for example, your monitor is running at 60 frames, it will do this 60 frames, basically 60 times per second, because it's frames per second. So, and then with the if statement, if this is true, then debug the log. This happens. What we use debug the log for in Unity is for it showing up in our console. So for example, like that's a debug the log. This is where debug the log will show up, and this is the error message put in the console saying that I haven't put a valid expression term over here because it needs something to run the code. So now I'm going to tell you what to put in here to get the input to send to Unity. There's a few different type of inputs that Unity offers, and it all begins with input dot whatever. So the first one we're going to do is getting key from a keyboard. So get key and putting a bracket behind this. This is what key we're gonna take in. So to get the key you want to take in, before every single key you do, you have to put key code dot and then the key you want to get. So you can choose anything basically on your keyboard, even joysticks are in here. So for example, space. And what this code is doing is basically it's getting a game object which hasn't been used. That's what this line is for, and setting an int called num to 1, and each time, so basically how many times per second, dependent on your frame, it will run this code inside. So if input dot get key, if space key is true, so if space key is pressed, then put num plus 1 into the console, which is where I showed you over here. So let's save this and run the code. So if you watch me press once, that's once, and it jumped to 28. The reason, as I said before, it's running this to your frames per second. So my computer is probably at around 30 to 28 frames. So each time I press it, it goes up by around 30 frames. And if I hold it, as long as this key is held down, it will run this many times. And we're going to be testing a few different ones that are similar to this. So get key is basically when you hold the key down, it will run the code. And let's come back to VS Visual Studio and change this to get key down. What this is exactly what it says. It will only run the code inside if you press it down, not hold it, not up, just once, and it's down. So if I run the same code and press once, sorry, I didn't save it, There we go. And once. No matter how much I press it, it's always adding a 1 on top of what it already is. So 387, and then 388, 389, 390. So I'm holding my spacebar down right now, and it's not updating. It's only updating the second it is down. Not holding it, not up, the second it is down. So the next one is get key up, which is exactly what it says again. It will only update, it will only run this code if the key is up. So let's save it and run. And I'm pressing down and I'm holding it, nothing's happening. When I let go, it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's only updating or running the code inside when the key is released. So 8. Now we're gonna go get the mouse inputs. So they are still under the input dot collection. So what we want to do is input dot get mouse. Surprising. Get mouse button. So I'm gonna get mouse button down. And for mouse, it's a bit different. You don't have to put key code, whatever, all those stuff. What you have to do is put a single digit. So if I put 1, there's no more error. So how this works is, on your mouse, there's 3 buttons. The left click, right click, and there's another one. It's the middle click. So the middle scroll wheel, you can click it down. So 0 to 2, that's from left to right. So left is 0, middle is 1, and 2 is right click. I'm gonna put 0 on in my code, and boom, no error. Save this and go back to the game and running this code. So if I just click once down, it will run the code. And same for all the other inputs as I've shown you before. The mouse, get mouse button without the down. It's just simply, you can hold it. It's good for gun games where you want to hold the mouse to shoot. This is how you will get the input and use it. So hold the button down, it will continually going up by frames. Tap once, it's going up by the frames I am going up by now. So, and then the next one, get mouse button up. Let it load a bit and run. Yes, there we go, and let go, and you will update your editor, I mean your console, or whatever you want to do really. I'm just using the console as an example, but yeah, so that's all the inputs right there. Now what I'm gonna teach you is, like I said before, how to hook the GetComponent thing up here, so getting something from Unity and the input, so you can create your own little experiment yourself. Say in a game we wanted to change the field of view of the camera. We'll start off by changing something within the script, this game object to camera. So that's basically getting the camera component of the object. So remember, whatever is within the inspector is a component, and whatever is within the hierarchy is the game object. So what we want to get right now is still the camera, but it's the camera component. So at the load, it should say mismatch. Yeah, there we go, it's mismatch. And if we try to go to camera and drag the camera in, it won't let us because there's only one inspector and we can't drag it across. There's a few solutions to this, but one way is that you can open a different inspector by going 3 dots and add tab inspector, and then right clicking on the inspector to lock it. So choose the camera, lock it, and then choose your player. So now when you have the camera and click on to the player, dragging it over here, so then you got 2 inspectors, then you can drag it in and you have the camera hooked up. But that is a terrible way of doing it. I don't recommend you doing it. You can if you want, but I'm going to teach you how to do it with code, so it's easier for our lives. So going back into your script, this is what you should see, and what you want is change this back to game object and name it camera. So then what you want to do is create a new component, but this one is going to be private. So you can put private in front or nothing. Either way, it won't show up within the inspector. I'll put private just for better showcase. And what do we want to get? The camera component, remember? Go back to the Unity editor, the camera component. Here's the name. This is the component we want to get if you want to change the field of view within the component right here. So going back and naming it, for example, FOV, field of view, and a semicolon, and going into our update. This is what we can do. So FOV, which is the component, it's not set to anything right now because it's private. We have to set it ourselves. So FOV equals to camera dot get component, and what component do we want is the camera component. Putting a bracket and a semicolon behind it, we have successfully hooked up the camera component into the FOV right here. So let me explain what I did here exactly. So I made a variable name, so variable type, so it's just camera, and named it FOV. And then I got the game object of camera, and with each dot I step down a level. So camera, game object, step down a level, get the component, and then what component do I want to get? The camera component, and finishing off like that. So what we want to do next is get the field of view. So FOV, like I said before, each dot is going to the next part of the code. So FOV, what do we want to do with the component of camera? So going back to Unity, what do we want to do with this? Get the field of view. So we'll go FOV dot field of view, and you can end it like that, but that won't do anything. We want to change it every click. So field of view equals FOV dot field of view plus, for example, 1. There's a simple way of doing this by just simply doing plus plus. That is the same of doing 1 every time, and I want to change this to down. So every time I press the button, my mouse, left click down once, it will add 1 to the field of view of the camera. So let's test it out. Hook it up, mismatched, and because the reason it's mismatched because we matched up the component before, but it's asking for a game object. So dragging the game object here, main camera, and running the game. So if I don't do anything right now, it won't change. And if I go into the inspector, right now the field of view is 59. Every time I press left click, as you can see on the right here, every time I press it down, it is getting increased. And if I spam this, you can see clearly the box is getting further and further and further away. We can use this to have like an in-game telescope, or like a running animation where the field of view gets zoomed backwards. It's wherever your imagination can take you, really. And one optimization with the code we wrote, this is a very bad habit of writing get component within your update. It's getting the component every single time. So think about you go into the Unity editor, opening this, find this, and change this every single time. We want to save it just into a variable of FOV and change it from there. So this is where the start method comes in. So start and create a class, I'm pretty sure, and just put simply this, Control X and Control V. Save it like that. Now it's doing much more optimization than before, but since for our game, or if you can really call this a game, it's just zooming the field of view outwards so it looks further away, it didn't really matter. But within your actual game, if you have a lot of these components running every single frames per second, so basically how many times your frames per second is running at, you could be 60, 144, depending on your computer and your monitor. It will take a lot of work for your computer to go in here, pick this, pick that, whatever, change it, and doing it how many times per frame. So we just want to do it once at the start and then change the value in the update. If I save this now, go back, you will see it will do the exact same thing. Click on it once, and as you can see, it is changing. There we go. And for each object, you can add as many components as you want. For example, add component on the player object. You can add rigid body 2D, audio, effects, event, layout, mesh, all etc. So you can have fun messing around with this add component and the code to create your own little game. Last things last, I'll be leaving you a bit of homework, just a tiny bit, don't be scared. What I want you to create is a script collecting all that we've learned all together. That, for example, your field of view is at 50 when the game starts. It gets set to 60 right there, if it will load there, and when you press W, the forward key, the view will get zoomed out to 80, and when you let go, it goes back to 60, creating like a kind of dashing or sprinting effect. The code will be left at the very end of the video if you want to check your answers, and have fun coding.